Hey, if your Facebook group sucks because you can't get anyone in to engage, much less turn them into clients, then this is for you. All right, welcome. And today we're talking to Lori Doddy. Kind of excited to talk about Lori because she's going to think I'm trying to butter her up when I say this, but I'm really not. But she's one of the smartest human beings that I know, especially when it comes to in terms of like building a Facebook group, engaging with people, messaging them, getting them to turn into clients. I mean, hands down. So we all know that you're amazing at that. And I'm kind of excited to get into some of your secrets about that today. So if you just want to introduce yourself, go right ahead.
Sure. Well, thanks, Ben. I really appreciate it. I am really enjoying our conversation, and I'm really excited about this venture and what we're doing. So, I'm Dr. Lori Doddy. I am a former public school teacher, graduate professor, came through the A&M system here in Texas, and then moved into administration and was vice president of instruction for some colleges here in the Texas area. And I had my own sort of health journey as a female through my 30s and 40s, and then moving into perimenopause, had my own health journey. And through figuring out what would work for me, I kind of stumbled into coaching and helping other women with wellness and weight loss. And in 2020, I retired and went into this business full time. But since then, it's grown and become such a huge, amazing success. And I'm really blessed to be able to say that. But in the last 2 years, I've been helping other business owners with how they can expand and grow their online businesses so that they can help that many more people too. And so I'm really excited about this part of this journey and what we're doing too, because I feel like we make a huge impact. This is the analogy that I'll give you. Really quick story, okay? So when I was teaching in the classroom, I had a really difficult time moving from the classroom full time into administration and training, right? But the way I kind of got over that was I realized that I can only touch so many students when I'm in the classroom. But when I'm training teachers, I get to touch and impact that many more students. And this is the same thing. Through our wellness business, we can impact tons of women, and we have, but through helping other business owners make a more effective impact, then I feel like it's just compounding the impact that I'm able to make. And so that's why it really excites me to do this work.
Nice. Very good. Just on a personal level, when we first started talking about this, I was thinking about when we've been in some group settings together and we start talking about, how to grow your group. And then when other coaches and such, when they would hear you start talking about how to engage with people and then how to turn those leads into clients and all that kind of stuff, people would just light up, right? Mm-hmm. Getting the leads was all fun and everything, but man, it's just a totally different energy shift when they learn how to actually have a conversation with them. And that's what I'm kind of excited about when we're talking about this. So
yeah. And you know what, I won't go too far on a tangent, but what I did in my previous career, spanning 30 years, just worked so hand in hand with this, because my PhD is in studies of persuasion and communication. And so this work with humans and helping other coaches and business owners be more effective in their interactions with people, it all just falls into place. So yeah, I'm really excited about it too. I light up when I get to have those conversations. I feel like this is my drug.
Okay, well, that works.
Yeah.
Very good. Well, let's just kind of go ahead and get into it. And I think that one of the first things, or I think would be good to talk about is, what are some of the primary reasons for low engagement in Facebook groups? Because I think, I can't tell you how many people I run into, and even myself, you might have a few hundred people in the Facebook group, but nobody's talking to anybody. There's no engagement. I have my own theories on it, but I want to hear what you have to say.
Yeah. For one, I think the number of Facebook groups that are out there, people are almost like immune to it. You know what I mean? Like if you look at the average person's Facebook account and you see how many groups they belong to, there are people who have they're in hundreds of groups, and they never go to those groups. They never have any kind of interaction with those groups. They don't see the posts in those groups. They just don't participate. And part of it is because when Facebook groups became a thing on Facebook, we saw them explode, and we joined anything and everything, right? Like the crock pot group, the dog group, so people, the average person belongs to so many groups that they never even have anything to do with, and they've gotten numb to it, right? And so many group owners or administrators don't do anything with their groups. So part of why we don't engage is it's just kind of another one of those things that's part of Facebook that we really don't pay any attention to. And what's exciting about that is that creates the opportunity for people like we're working with to really like reignite those groups and make them truly something different. So I think that's one of the primary reasons. Another reason is, as administrators of Facebook groups, people don't generally do a very good job cultivating a community, cultivating an environment where people feel like they belong. And so that, between me being in 500 groups and the fact that nobody pays attention to me, nobody makes me feel like I belong here, that I'm a member of this in any way, that this is for me, that this is truly a community, you just put all that together and it's like nobody pays any attention. So your groups suck.
Yeah, that's true. Those are good points. But I was just wondering that people might still have the question, do Facebook groups still work?
Yeah.
Right? Do they still work to get clients or to cultivate a community?
Yeah. I actually think they can work better now than they ever have because of just what I was explaining. So because we've gotten so numb to crappy groups and that's what's out there, when you stand out in your group and you actually create a space where people not only enjoy what goes on in the group, but they look forward to it in a way that they go to the group to find out what's there. When you can do that, then you can stand out among the sea of like nothingness. So I think, in fact, they can work better. I think this is a really prime time to reignite your Facebook group and utilize it.
Yeah, that makes sense because it's when most of it's crap,
yeah,
and most of it is, for one reason or another, it's a lot easier to stand out.
Absolutely.
Yeah, so that makes
I mean, think about if we wouldn't even be doing this actually if there were so many Facebook groups out there that you had to compete with, like it would be so difficult to stand out that I don't know that it would be worth jumping in and putting the effort in that way. I'd probably be advising putting effort in another way, right? But like you said, when the standard is down here, it doesn't take much for you to rise above that, and people recognize that.
Yeah, that's a good. So let's think about this for just a second. So let's talk just a little bit about the people who are already in the group, right? So you've already got a set of people who are already in there. They're already disengaged. Is it possible to reignite them?
Yeah, that's a good question. So when I talk to coaches and online business owners, I hear one of two things. I don't know how to start a group and get people in it, or I have a group, maybe it has a few hundred people in it, but I haven't done anything with it, right? And I think it's possible to create a space like I'm talking about that is enjoyable, that people do look forward to in both of those situations. And so if you're that person who has that coach or online business owner who has like 150 people in the group, it is you to take different strategies to do it, right? To start that. And I have some really specific strategies for how to go about that. But you absolutely can use some of the strategies that I'm going to talk about and get people to notice again, like get people to go, oh, okay, there's something new going on here. There's a reason for me to go here and check this now. And I would encourage people to do that over starting a new group. That's the question I get all the time. Should I just scrap that and start a new group? No, that would be down the road kind of decision. There are several things that I would have you do before you took that angle.
Oh, that's good to know. Yeah. Okay. So I'd say people have that question often. Let's just start over. But what I have found, not specifically to groups, but for things similar to that, like say their Instagram account or their Facebook page, well, I'll just start a new one. Then you're just always starting something new because you never finish out with what you have.
Absolutely. And there
so
are some tricks to re-engaging, because one of the things people will say, yeah, but I've heard that if your Facebook group doesn't have any activity or hasn't had for so long, that then Facebook's not going to like push your posts out, or your people aren't going to see it. There's some tricks for how to make that happen. And in general, that may be somewhat true. A dead Facebook group can have some challenges, but there are kind of backdoor ways around that.
Yeah, I mean, there's an algorithm component, I'm sure, but at the same time, there's also workarounds. I mean,
Absolutely.
that's marketing in its essence, really, is
Yeah.
you're having to work around things, these obstacles that come up. Yeah, and
For sure. And when people talk about, the algorithm component, there is, you're right. But I think sometimes we tend to like lean too much on that.
yeah, 100%. Yeah, and that's a good thing, because that's easy for people to blame,
Right, right,
or the
right.
gurus out there to say, oh, the algorithm's changed, and blah blah blah, and I mean, I'm sure
But
that's
the
true.
upside
Yeah,
is
yeah.
that there are ways, like you said, there are workarounds for it. And it's not one of those things that you're doomed. The algorithm doesn't have you by the throat and control your lifeblood on Facebook. You can absolutely do some things to infuse activity again and revive that Facebook group.
Okay, very good. Okay, so and listen, and just so anybody watching this, we'll talk about leads and how to get people to the Facebook group another time, because that's a whole other topic that
Yeah.
we're not going to be able to get into here, because that is obviously a crucial thing to get done. But what I was hoping, and I'm thinking that we're going to get on here, is that people that are try to get some wins for you if you already have a group, and that's kind of why we're doing this. And I'm what you've already said has been really good so far. So let's just think about people who maybe you are getting people to your group, but it's a onesie twosie kind of thing that happens. It's not every day by any means. So what are some effective strategies for the initial communication with them when people come to join?
When people are already like coming into the group, or trying to get people kind of organically, like upping those onesies and twosies to get more people in the group, or maybe both.
Yeah. Well, I think that just from a lead getting extra people, I think we'll talk about that
Okay.
later.
Okay.
Let's just talk about the people that are coming in now, because it's kind of a broad thing. There's a lot to that.
Yeah.
I know, but anyway.
Yeah.
But so let's just say, you woke up this morning and there's 10 people that requested to join your group. What do you do?
Yeah. For one thing, I'm a really big advocate of reviewing the people who have joined the group, making sure you're getting the right people in the group, because you've got to know who your group is for, so that you can cultivate that community, right? And make sure that you do have people in there that what you are doing in the group is for those people. So number one, when people request to join your group, have an idea and have parameters around who this is for. Who is the ideal person that gets the value from this group? And then don't be afraid to not admit people to your group. That's one thing, so that you're actually like shaping your group with the people that it's for, right? And then every single new person that you admit to the group, within 24 hours of admitting them, they need to get a personal message from you. They need to get an outreach message from you. Now, people will say, well, but not everybody's going to get their messages, and that's absolutely the case, but you send that message, and there are ways that you can take action after that to better ensure they get your message. And even they might get it 2 or 3 days later, but you send it out within 24 hours or so. And that message doesn't need to be, oh, hey, thanks for joining my group. It needs to be more substantial than that. It needs to have your personal touch. It needs to say something to them that gives them a reason for responding to the message, right? You want to always make sure people are selfish. Like, think about it. We are really selfish human beings, right? It's human nature. And so you want your message that initially goes out to end with something that gives them a reason to respond. That's first and foremost. When people have that initial connection.
Can I ask something?
Yeah,
right
sure.
There? So that makes a lot of sense to me. Is there an urgency component too, or is it just more of a, like, you're not trying to necessarily take something away from them there at the beginning, right?
No,
okay.
no.
Right. Go ahead.
You want me to give you like a specific strategy?
Yeah, sure.
For that.
That'd be great.
So one of the things that I teach in terms of like cultivating group and community and engagement is that you've got to have something to give people, right? And so it's not that you're going to take away, but it's that you're going to give them. You're going to add that value, right? And so depending on what kind of business you're in, that can look different, right? But there's some piece of value that people are going to want. What is the problem that you solve, for example, right? And if you solve a specific problem for people, what is one thing that people feel like they need to have to make a step toward that solution, right? And so that can be a value add, whether it's just a one sheet of tips, whether it whatever that looks like, that we hear people call them lead magnets, right? Or freebies or free resources, but you want to have a resource that feels valuable to people. And so you offer that, like in my Facebook group, everybody gets a resource as a new member. Every single member does. And so that's what I mean by you want to give them something, a reason to respond to your message, because you're putting that out there that you're going to send it. Now, you don't send a message. Your initial message doesn't say like, hey, welcome to my Facebook group that doesn't suck. Here is the link to a free resource. No, you want to engage them, make the connection with them, and then the leverage, so to speak, is they get the resource by responding you. Hey, let me know. Like, let me know when you see this because I've got a goodie for you, right? It's like that tease.
Conversational.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that makes sense. Good.
Yeah.
Good. I put something down here as you were talking about, kind of making sure they're the right people as they're coming in.
Yeah.
So if somebody tries to join as a page versus their personal profile, do you let those in?
Yeah.
Or do you?
That's a great question. And I think that depends on who your ideal client is, right? Who is it? We're talking about using these Facebook groups for community and value add, but at the end of the day, right, from a business perspective, we want to make money, right? We're in the business of finding people that we can help so that they can pay us to help them. And so those are usually individuals. So it depends on what the problem is that you solve for me to definitively answer that question. But in general, it's going to be individuals. So not pages. The other thing I'll say is even more specific with individuals. I work like our fitness and wellness business. We only work with women. So this group, part of the identity and the community in this group is it's a safe space for women from a certain age with certain, like-minded kinds of goals and struggles. So we don't let men in our group, right?
I mean,
and so I hold those boundaries because that's the standard I have set, and that's the expectation that the members have. And so, even gender or age or whatever those kind of demographics are, then I would make sure that I stuck to that in letting members in. And that all, I mean, it seems like those are small kinds of details, but all of those sort of compound and culminate into how and why your group becomes really engaged and effective.
And I totally get, and it 100% makes sense, hey, if your group's designed for that, for women, let's say you don't necessarily want to let in men, or, if you're...
Or joint accounts, that's another example of that, right? Like the husband and wife who, and then there's a strategy for that. We don't just like decline them, and that was the point I was getting to, and I rambled too long to get to it. But, in an example like that, our reach out to the woman who's like, Sarah Ann John Smith, well, we don't let those accounts in, but our reach out looks different to them because we send a message that shows that the message is for Sarah, and then once we get her to respond to us, then we talk to her about that and we explain, like just talking to somebody, we explain and ask, do you have another account? We'd love for you to join, but here's why we don't let joint accounts in, and do you have another account? We've had women who create their own account just to be part of our group. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. And I mean, I don't know if this is true or not, but it seems like people who are willing to take that step are a lot more interested, qualified, engaging than people who wouldn't.
Absolutely. But that connection piece is so vital. And think about that, Ben. Somebody reached out to you and said like, hey, Ben, we got your request to join, but I noticed that, your girlfriend is on your account with you, whatever, right? Like, we know that's not true, but
yeah, I mean, I wouldn't have a girlfriend, so that's not going to be true at all.
But if you got that personal message and they were like, hey, do you have your own account for XYZ reason? Either way, right? Even if you're like, the group's not for me, you feel so much better about how that went down. And if you are like, hey, I've got that account, then that sets the tone for the relationship that you're starting to build with that person who will potentially become a client and pay you money.
That makes sense. Yeah. Okay. And I was just going to say that I think sometimes we get caught up in trying to make things easy for everybody. And there is some truth to that, but it's not a bad thing to get somebody to jump through a hoop.
No.
Necessarily.
No, not at all. I think it goes to what you were saying about them, really wanting to be there, and being the right people. And so those kinds of interactions initially really help to set the tone for the group. But go ahead, because I will talk all day about those kinds of strategies.
I was thinking about, so I have a group that I don't participate in and never really have, and it was from my podcast, which was called Facebook Ads with a Twang. And so people would come and join the group, and I dilly dallied around there. I just just wasn't my thing. But nevertheless, I mean, people are still requesting to join today.
Mm-hmm.
But then when pages became available to start joining the group, I immediately knocked them out. I was like, nope, 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 no. But now listening to what I had to say about that, in hindsight, I probably would have gone back and said, well, wait a minute.
Yeah.
Maybe we shouldn't. I shouldn't just be so dismissive.
With
and
your
check them out.
with your client group and what you do. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, that makes sense. I also had kind of a thing of, if they hadn't had a Facebook profile for more than like 12 months or something, or nothing on it, then I wouldn't let them, and stuff like that. But anyway, that's interesting. Okay, good. Yeah, I've seen that quite a bit though, where they just but in my specific niche that I work in, I do tend to get a lot of bogus things requesting to join to begin with. I mean, that's just out there. That's just part of the deal.
Yeah, for sure.
Which that's going to happen. So, okay. So when they come in and you ask them, and I'm assuming this is dependent upon what each person does for their niche or whatever, but you ask them specific questions based on that. Is that how that works? So
I do.
You have to really okay.
Yeah, like the group join questions. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And there's a real strategy for structuring those questions in a way that, I mean, you don't want to ask questions just to ask questions, right? And so there's a strategy for how to create those questions in a way that best serves you. And you can get some information about people too in a way that helps you to move them along that sort of continuum. When I talk with business coaching clients, I talk about that continuum from connection to client, right? There's a process, and it starts with connection. And so when you ask those questions, if you do that strategically, you get information to help you move them along that continuum in a more effective and speedier way, right?
Okay, so they do that. They answer the questions. You check them out. They seem like a good fit for one way or another. You let them in, and then you message them.
Yep.
And then, so when somebody comes into the group and you message them, and I want to ask you a little bit more about that too, like if you need to pick your battle on who you're going to message, especially if you're getting a lot of requests. But beyond that, so when you message them, how do you do it without being overbearing or intrusive or
Yeah, no, I think it's a good question. First and foremost, though, I think if somebody's requesting to join your group and why would you think that it would be intrusive to message them, right? And so sometimes I think we create a problem that doesn't even exist in our own head, right? So if you're like, oh my gosh, I don't want to, intrude on people. And so like, why would you even think that? Has somebody told you that it was intrusive for you to message them, right? So be aware of how your own thinking can hold you up, like hold you back too, right?
But your mindset, I mean, it's really just your mindset. Like, hey, they came to join the group. They obviously want to hear what you have to say. So,
right.
Wow.
And if they don't, like, do you want them in there?
Right. Yeah.
Right. I mean, if they don't want to interact with you, like, there's a problem there, right?
Yeah.
But yeah, so I think too, it's like, we forget sometimes when we're overthinking these things, we forget that we're just like humans talking to other humans, and we overcomplicate, like, how do I say that? And what do I do? And not to say that there's not some strategy. There's definitely strategy. I mean, I give, coaching clients like scripts to use, and as templates, I should say, not really scripts. So I get the need to like have some anchor to start with, but at the same time, at the end of the day, we've got to remember, like, if you walked up to somebody at a party and you needed to talk to them, you wouldn't be like, oh, is it like, how do I introduce myself? Well, I don't know. Some very socially awkward people might, but in general, if you have a business where you're dealing with people, you don't typically have that trouble, right? So just very conversationally send a friendly message is like my first and foremost tip, and don't worry about it being or feeling like it's, intrusive. One really great way to get over that, I think, and I teach this to, clients that I do business coaching with, use voice note. That they hear your voice, they get a sense of your personality, because think about it from a communications standpoint, right? Like, we have so many clues when we're talking to people. We're on video right now. People who are watching this on video, they can see our faces. our expressions. Like I use my hands a lot. They can hear the intonation, but there's a lot of clues that help to create the meaning in this video setting. Well, you start taking away those different communication components and those clues, and it pares down the message and it makes it difficult for you to convey meaning. So go to texting or Messenger, Facebook Messenger, where you're just typing in, right? There's no facial expression, there's no tone of voice, there's no intonation, there's no energy behind that. They're just reading words. And so how they take that message, they've got a lot less evidence. They've got a lot less to work with to understand how the message comes off, right? And you, as the sender, you have a lot less control over them receiving the message with the intent that you mean for them to receive it. So instead of taking that flat text approach, one of the things you can do to stand out is to send a voice note. Hit that record and send a really quick 10-15 second voice note. Your energy comes through. They can't see your face, but they can hear your voice, and people are like, wow, that's different. Like, I mean, and it's just received in such a better way. So, sending a voice note is one way I would say you're not going to sound intrusive. If I voice note you and I say, hey Ben, like I'm super thrilled that you joined our Total Wellness group. Hey, tell me, like, why'd you want to join? You'd be like, oh, cool. Like nobody does that, right? Like, yeah. Well, you wouldn't think, oh, what a freaking weirdo. Like, how dare you interrupt my day with your happy voice and welcoming message?
Let me ask you this. So I was talking to somebody earlier today, and her ideal audience, it's actually kind of broad for what she does, but she has some people who are, 65 and over, and so one of her concerns was like, well, they're technology adverse. Mm-hmm. And my response to that was as well, maybe some of them.
Yeah, I was going to ask, how does she know that?
Yeah, but I think that's kind of, because I mean, of course, I can't go by my dad. He's 85 and he's on TikTok every day. It's crazy. He talks about it's just, and again, there's probably not, may not be a lot of people like that either. But my thought process was as well, if your ideal audience can't receive the messages, you'll just have to either do it another way, mm-hmm. but you won't know until you try it.
Exactly. And I think this is another case of where like our thoughts, we create this story without real evidence of it, right? So to my question, like, how does she know that? You know what I mean? Like, where's the evidence? That's just a thought that she's created. And unless she has some data to back that up, making a decision to move in a direction based on that thought is really wrong-headed thinking.
It's funny. There's somebody that I follow on Instagram who's huge, and I don't do Instagram much. And one of the things she said, because she's talking about doing Instagram Reels a lot, and one of the things she said was, well, you can tell somebody's a newbie at Instagram Reels because they make the text real big.
Oh.
And I was like, oh, oops. And I'm in my head, I keep thinking, well, the reason you make it real big is because you don't want people to have to get their glasses out to look at it, and so maybe
is that projecting?
Yeah. Maybe that is true or not. It doesn't really matter, but I was thinking, okay.
Yeah.
So now you live and you learn. Yeah. But do you think that people aren't contacting people because they're just too timid to, just because they feel like it's, like I said, intrusive, or they feel like they're going to get rejected, or they feel like, hey, these people don't want that? Is that what it is, or just?
I think it's a mix of all of those things. They just, and one is they don't have a strategy for what they're doing with their Facebook group. I mean, it's just kind of haphazard, and I will raise my hand at this. When I first started my Facebook group, I didn't really have a process. I didn't have strategies in place. It was just like, I started it, so I wasn't consistent with messaging. I wasn't consistent with posting in my group. I was, and that inconsistency breeds dead. Right? That breeds a dead no-go group that nobody wants to be part of. And so, I'm talking in years of hindsight now, and having honed all these strategies and knowing what works and testing, and finding out what doesn't and what does. And I think it's just a lot of people just don't know. They don't know what to do.
I think that's true. Very true. And the advice out there is pretty generic and pretty bad.
Yep.
So it's like, oh yeah, just post 5 times a day and you'll, okay, well that doesn't tell you anything.
Exactly.
And how do you know that's true?
Exactly.
Most of the advice I see out there is exactly what you talk about. I hear it, but I don't see anything to back it up. Mm-hmm. It sounds good, mm-hmm. but is it good? I don't know.
Is it good for you, or is it good for someone else? Like, how do I know if that's the right advice for me, right? That's a big problem that I see with business owners who don't know what to do. It's just like they're trying to piece together, like, oh, well, this person said this and this influencer said that. And I'm like, well, it doesn't mean necessarily that it's wrong, but it may be wrong for you,
Yeah.
right? You've
Yeah,
got to
that's
find,
exactly right. I
yeah.
agree. Okay. All right. So, since I think, or at least my thought is that a lot of the people that might be watching this, or at least watching it this far, are thinking, okay, great, I got the message done. How do I because I really need to book a call with them, or they need to book a call with me. How do I
Mm-hmm.
transition to that? I mean, what kind of
Yeah.
techniques, or how do you encourage that
Yeah.
among the group
Well,
members?
for one, it goes back to strategy, right? Because everything is done with intention. So, for example, the questions that we talked about in terms of the new group join questions, there you
Hmm.
can devise a question so that if people are coming to your group looking for an answer, they're looking for a solution. I mean, there will be people. There are people who join my group every day who are like, they join my group because they want to know what I have to offer. That's the solution. Like they're ready to buy, right? And
Hmm.
so part of your strategy is things like your group questions have to identify those people right away, because those people, the outreach to them is going to be different from just, Ben who joined my group and I don't really have any idea why.
Is it like, just as an example, is it like you might have a group join question that has a free form answer, and those who write the love letter versus those that do yes,
You can,
no?
you
Okay.
can, but in fact, when I've tested that, what
Hmm.
works better, if you want me to give like a specific strategy, what
Yeah.
works better is having a question that identifies what you do and who it's for, so people can go, that's me, and then giving them a couple of options about how they get information or if they want information about that, because everybody who comes is going to see the question, right? If you do the free form question, the person who's just kind of like tip hunting or like checking stuff out, they're just going to leave that blank and you're not going to know anything from that. It's just going to be like, did they miss it? Did that not show up for them? Did they choose to not, like whatever.
Mhm.
If you give them a couple of really strategic answers, that there's an intent behind that. So, for example, create the question, here's who it's for, here's what I do. Would you be interested in more information about that? Not, are you ready to buy? Do you want to become my client? But do you want more, are you interested in more information about that? Yes, send me a message, or no, maybe later. What I come across, one of the first things when I like do kind of an eval or like an audit of what people have going on before I decide if I'll take them as clients
Yeah.
in business coaching. This is the kind of thing that I'll see like a question like, hey, I sell this. Do you want to buy it? Are you ready to buy it? And it's like, yes, no, or maybe. Not a great way. Take it from a curriculum designer, and I have like expertise in creating test questions and answers, right? Like,
Hmm.
you don't want to say yes or no. You want to say like some version of yes, I want the information, and another version that's like no, maybe later. It's not a hard no. It's a
Hmm.
maybe later, right? And so
Right.
that's an intention too, that gives you an opportunity to reach out to them, but in a different way, to get the connection going and
Hmm.
nurture them along that pathway to the yes, I want it now. Does that
Right.
make sense?
It does make sense, yeah. And I know I kind of backtracked on that because we were talking about transitioning to a call and stuff, but that's what came up. I was like,
Yeah.
okay, how does that play into that
Yeah,
and
absolutely. And
so
those
forth?
people that are like, yes, message me, that's
Hmm.
exactly what you can do. You can get in, ask just a couple of really strategic questions, and then your goal is to get on a call with them. Like, you want to talk with them. You don't want to do this all in the DMs. I know there are people who sell in the DMs, but in my opinion, that is so like disconnected. They are skeptical. Online has blown up so much. People are skeptical, and people truly want to know that you're a real human being who really care and really want to help them solve the problem, right? That's who they're going to buy from, right? You might even be selling the same thing that 500 million people are selling, and I'm kind of now going into the issue of oversaturation, but it doesn't matter if your service is the same as 500 million other people, because that's not what they're buying. They're buying you giving them that service, that coaching, that whatever, right? And so it's about this connection piece that's missing, hugely missing, particularly since COVID, in my opinion. And so when you interact with them and they get a sense of who you are, like on a base level, Ben, do you do business with people you don't really like? Like, no, I'm serious. Like, I'm asking you.
No.
Do you?
Mm-mm,
No,
not
there's
really.
too many
I
people
mean,
out there, right? So you've got to give them a sense of who you are. I don't, did I answer your question?
yeah, and I think that there's something to that. So I think people drastically underestimate how many available people are actually that would be a good fit for them,
Yeah.
and so they're worried about the one or two. I have that happen all the time. time, especially when running ads for people. I just had this with a client where they had two people comment on their ad something kind of negative about the same thing. And I'm like, yeah, but 10,000 people saw it.
Exactly.
Like, and you're worried about the two. Like, you're trying, and it's not that what the two had to say wasn't important, but you can't do everything. So I was kind of thinking also about and setting an expectation. So, and what I mean is that, and you tell me, like, I don't know the answer to this, but it seems like you're going to have a segment of people who come to the group, they're ready to go. Like,
Yep.
they're in pain, whatever it is, and they're ready to take action. But most of the people are not.
Right.
And be okay with that. Like, hey, most people are going to need a little time with you, right?
Absolutely. Okay. Oh yeah, and there's we've run some data. You and I have talked about this before on group joins in my group, and I know I can tell within a range of if people buy within 30 days, like about half of our clients buy within 30 days. And it's broken down this way every time we've looked at it. About half of the people who come to our group buy within the first 30 days of being a member of our group, which is phenomenal. It's great. Like they probably came with the intention of, I'm going to solve this problem and I'm looking to see who I'm going to buy from, right? Yeah. The other half of people in my world, it's not the same for everybody, but a lot of people, it's similar, about 5 months, 5.5 months is what that where the fallout is. So 50% of our new clients every month within a month of joining my group, 50%, the other 50% have been there for 5 months or more, right? Yep. So what happens in between time? That's important.
Right.
It's not that you have a conversation with people in the first week or 30 days and then you don't have a conversation until 5 months later. What makes this number over here on 5.5 months continue to be so high is what happens in between the first 30 days and the 5.5 months.
And how easy it is to think that isn't important because people aren't doing anything.
That's exactly right.
I know, and it's just like, why am I doing this?
Yep.
But and not realizing the benefit.
Sorry to see, I told you it's like a drug. And how important it is to have a real purposeful strategy for what happens. It's easy to not do it, but if you are doing it, you're not just slapping crap out there, right? Like you've got an intention, a purpose, and you know what is driving that and how to get from the 30 days to the 5.5 months so that the 5.5 months is success and you're adding value all along the way.
Okay, gotcha. Okay, all right. Well, let me just say this. I feel like we've covered quite a bit, frankly. Yeah. And I don't want people to get the, trying to drink, from a fire hose kind of experience with it because, you can't do it all in one day. Yeah. But as we've been talking about, I know, you have a new course about this, but could you just talk about it a little bit? Like what's that about and what's that look like?
Yeah, for sure. I actually have I have a couple of courses actually, again from, somebody who's like putting their toe in the water to all the way to somebody who's like, I need this. I want to take advantage of this. I've got to capitalize on this, right? Mm-hmm. And so in general, all the way across the board in all of those, what I do is teach you the strategy that I'm talking about. How to take new Facebook members, and you help get them to the Facebook group, but how do I take those new Facebook leads, make that connection? What do I do all the way to them becoming client? So it's DM outreach. It's exactly how to do that, who to do that with, at what stages do you do that? How do you do that in ways that you actually get a response and you further that conversation? So how do I nurture them along from that first human conversation to them actually becoming a client? And I don't want to go into tons of details, but that's the gist of what it is. Like, how do I take a lead, get them in conversation, and in private message to sales call, make the sale?
Correct me if I'm wrong here, but you also teach them how to systematize that.
Absolutely.
And track it. I think that I cannot tell you how many people. I just talked to somebody today. They had 20 sales or something and I was like, well, where'd they come from? I don't know.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's, thank you for pointing that out because see, sometimes it's like, well, of course you do, right? Like in my head, it's like, of course you have to track them. But that is a huge part of it. So many business owners don't have systems in place. Like they have no way of tracking. They don't know. They just get in their DMs. Maybe they're, doing a good outreach job. They are in their DMs, which oftentimes I find that's not the case either. But if they're in their DMs, they think they just hold it all in their head, or they just go to their list of DMs, right? The threads of conversation. And man, you're missing the boat when you do that. You have to have a way of tracking conversations and being able to very simply, and I'm not talking about taking an Excel spreadsheet either. That's crap. That does not do you any good. But like doing it in a really purposeful way that even down to, like, I even teach it down to how visually you can see who you need to talk to next, right? And that's the only way that you don't leave tons of money on the table. I'd be willing to bet that a majority of the people listening to this have left at least the $10,000 a month that we talk about. So many people have that.
Yeah.
I bet they've left at least $10,000 a month on the table just because they don't have a way to track what they do in their business.
Yeah, I would say that's true because a lot of people that I run into, they don't run it like a business.
Yeah.
They do it like a hobby, and they're trying, and I get it, especially
Sure.
if you're newer, right? You got
Yeah.
all this going on. I
Yeah.
totally understand.
Well, and one thing I'll say about that too, Ben, before we go, because I think this is important, and I've run across this with people too. So a lot of people will start like their side hustle, right? They'll be working full time, and then they'll start the side gig that's kind of their hobby that they turn into like a little part-time kind of business. And when they're doing that and they're early in those stages, it's fun. It's the stress release. It's the outlet. It's the dream of getting away from the grind of the 9 to 5, right? And so we don't do those like business kinds of oriented activities. And then when people start to go into growing their business more seriously and they start to think about replacing my income so I can quit my job, and they haven't done any of the like business side of things, what happens is the hobby, the stress outlet, that starts to feel like work. And so then it's like, do I really want to do this? And what I have found, and my kind of parting message on this is, your side hobby stress relieving business has to continue to bring you the same joy, or at least, not that you're not going to have business headaches, trust me, you will, but it has to still light you up and make you happy. Otherwise, you're going to crash and burn. And the only way that you can do that is if you have processes that are really effective, that it doesn't feel like such a grind to track that kind of stuff. And that's exactly part of what I do and the way I do it, why I teach it the way I teach it.
Very good. Yeah, that's awesome. And that's awesome. Okay, well, that's great. I really appreciate it. And it seems like we covered a lot, frankly.
Yeah, we did.
Is there anything else? And by the way, just for everybody, so talking about Lori's course and everything, we'll have that in the description below. So just check that out and get all the details on it. And it's a lot. Like, it's really good, but it's not overwhelming, right? It's broken down into bite size chunks and stuff. It's got everything. So you'll have to read up on it when you have time. But
for sure.
But is there anything? Oh, I'm sorry. Go ahead.
And I was just going to say, and shoot me a message. If you have questions, you want to chat about it, like, shoot me a message and I'll voice note you back. If you shoot me a message and say, hey, I saw you and Ben, blah, 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 I will promise you I'll send you a voice note back instead of texting back. I'll just show you what it's like to get a voice note, right?
Very good.
Thanks so much for doing this.
Yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. Okay. And
you're welcome. We'll have to do it again.
Sounds good. I'll catch you later. Okay.
Okay. Bye.